I quit. I was making $60,000 a year as a dietitian, chasing six figures, hustling every day. It was exhausting and I was miserable. And the best part of my day was finally going home. And I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay in option A, which was the safe and predictable path I was on, or I could choose option B, which was risky and terrifying. And I chose option B, and that decision turned into a multiple seven-figure business, which brought me freedom and happiness and fulfillment. And today I'm sharing with you the 4 lessons that caused me to finally quit that 9-to-5, and one that sounds logical, but is actually the biggest lie we've ever been sold. Starting with number 1. I remember the exact season in my life when this specific realization hit me, and I knew I needed to leave my 9-to-5. I was working as a consultant dietitian in healthcare, and I had big goals that year that I really wanted to hit 6 figures. And I was making about $60,000 a year as a dietitian. And so I thought, okay, if I want to make more money, I just need to take on more accounts, I need to hustle harder, I need to say yes to more, then I'll hit my goal. And so I did. I took on everything. I was covering for a dietitian over here, and then I was helping out at this other account over here. I was saying yes to every opportunity because I believed this is the path to more income. And one day, I looked at my calendar and it hit me. Every single hour was already sold. My entire day was booked out with appointments after appointments, accounts, traveling to accounts, check-ins. There was not one single space left that actually belonged to me. And in that moment, I realized something that changed my entire life. As long as my income was tied to my time, I could never be free. Because no matter how much money I made, it would always be capped by the same 24 hours on the calendar. And so I was working harder than ever, but my freedom wasn't growing at all. It was actually shrinking. And that's when I discovered that this time for money rat race is a total trap. This 9-to-5 system teaches you to trade all of your time for somebody else's money. And that trade is the very thing that keeps you broke and limited, because we all have a limited amount of time. And I remember thinking, if this is what it takes to get to 6 figures, how am I ever supposed to do more? How do I ever get beyond that? I don't have any more time. If this is what success looks like, do I even want it? And that's when the second realization hit me even harder, because money isn't even the most valuable thing that I have. Time is. Because what is the point of chasing a bigger paycheck if it costs you your entire life? I used to tell myself, it's fine that I have no time. It's fine that I'm working hard right now because I'll have time later. But then later never came. Tomorrow never came. And so every time I hit a goal, I had less life to enjoy it. And that's when I started asking the real question. What is the point of having more money if I'm running out of life to live? If someone offered me $1 million today, but told me I had to skip the rest of my life and jump to my deathbed, I wouldn't take it, and neither would you. Because deep down, we all understand something on a really human level. We know that time is the most important asset that we have, and there's no amount of money that could make it worth it to give up our time for the money. And that realization changed how I looked at everything in my 9-to-5. I started wondering, why haven't we been taught to live life this way? Why have we been taught that the best path, the safe path, the responsible path to a good and successful life is giving away all of our time for somebody else's money? Once I saw this, I knew I needed to leave my 9-to-5. Because I stopped seeing my time as something to spend in order to get some money, and I started seeing it as something to invest. So my hours became assets for me, and I wanted to start buying back my life, buying back my time by investing it wisely. So that meant saying no to things that drained me. That meant no longer wasting an entire day buying groceries by going to 3 different grocery stores to get the best deal, to save some money. That meant no longer staying in a job that paid well but made me miserable. And I remember thinking, if I leave this 9-to-5 and I put all of my eggs into this business and really grow it and really scale it, and I completely lose everything and I fall flat on my face, guess what? I can always make more money. But the one thing I can never get back is my time, the years that I have now. And I knew I could always rebuild my income. I could always start over if I failed, but I could never get back the years I'd already wasted building somebody else's company. And at that point, I had already been quietly growing my own business on the side. I was taking some clients, I was trying to figure it out, but I hadn't fully committed yet. And so I still had like one foot in the security door and one foot in freedom. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to keep renting out my life by the hour. And I knew that I needed to quit my 9-to-5. And so the first thing that I learned that caused me to leave my 9-to-5 is that the 9-to-5 system is a money trap. time is more valuable than money. But even after I knew I needed to quit, there was still one belief that kept me stuck longer than I'd like to admit. Because even when I had the time, and I knew that time was more valuable than the money, there was that voice in the back of my head saying, yeah, but at least this job you have is secure. I thought I was being smart and responsible and safe by having that job until I saw what security really looks like behind the scene, which was watching someone in my life. This was actually a friend of my husband's. This is a guy who'd been in management, had a really great job. He's making well over 6 figures a year. He'd been at the same company for years, worked his way up in management. Everyone liked him. He had a great reputation. Upper management knew him by name. And then the company went through this really rough season where people were unhappy and some people were leaving to go get better pay somewhere else. And so all of the managers were quietly talking about maybe jumping ship too. And so word got back to the upper management and they called a meeting and they told everyone, listen, don't leave. We love you. We're going to take care of you. We're even going to give you a raise just to stay. Like, don't leave and go to that other competitor. And this wasn't a small raise either. He got a 30% raise. And so if you've ever worked in corporate, you know this is unheard of. And so he thought, okay, you know what? This is the safe choice. These people have my back. These are the people who know me. They know that I'm a hard worker. They know that I'm committed. That I'm just going to stay here and take the raise. So he took the raise, he stayed, and for a while it seemed fine, but once all of the dust settled in the company and everything kind of went back to normal and quieted down, he started to notice things changing. The tone in the meeting started to change, the way upper management looked at him, the opportunities that used to come his way started going to somebody else, and he started seeing that he had just made himself a target in the company. Because now he's making 30% more than the going rate. Meanwhile, they could hire somebody new, do the same job, and save a ton of money. And so within a year, maybe a year and a half, he was let go. Just like that. The same company that said, we've got your back, don't leave, we're going to take care of you. The same company that said, we value you, we're even going to prove it, here's your raise. They replaced him like that. He lost his entire income and ended up having to move back in with his parents, a grown man in his late 30s, maybe his early 40s. And I remember thinking, this is what we work for? This is what we call security? And that's when I realized this whole idea of job security is a total illusion. Because you can be replaced in a moment and it doesn't matter if you are well liked, it doesn't matter if you are loyal, it doesn't matter if you've done the best job that you could do, it doesn't matter if you've been there for 10 years, everybody is replaceable. Even CEOs get voted out of their own companies. And so that's when I understood security doesn't come from a paycheck. It doesn't come from a job title or a contract or even a raise. Security comes from you. It comes from your ability to create value. It comes from your ability to adapt and build, to think, to lead, and without a company's name behind you. And it reminds me of something Robert Allen said. He said, in life, there are two doors, one marked security and one marked freedom. If you choose security, you get neither. But if you choose freedom, you get both. And that line stuck with me because it's true. When you chase security, you're giving someone else control over your future. But when you choose freedom, you take all of the risk and all of the responsibility, but you're building something that's for you. And so, yeah, it's scary and you're going to question yourself at times and you're going to wonder if you've lost your mind, and people around might look at you and think you've lost your mind and you are crazy. But I'd rather walk the uncertain road that leads somewhere extraordinary than stay on the safe one that leads to regret. Because that's the thing about security. It feels safe right up until it isn't. And so the second thing I realized before quitting my 9-to-5 is security is an illusion and we are all replaceable. And even when I finally accepted this truth that security is an illusion, and there's still another challenge that comes up because I didn't even see this coming, but it wasn't really about the money anymore. It wasn't about the risk. It was about people. Because the moment you start doing something different, the moment that you start stepping into freedom, not everybody is going to agree with you. And when I first started realizing I needed to leave my 9-to-5, I really thought the hardest part would be giving up the money and the secure paycheck. I thought it would be figuring out how to replace my income and how to build something from scratch and make it really work. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was dealing with other people's opinions. The moment that I started talking about quitting my job, suddenly everybody had something to say. Family, friends, coworkers, even people I loved and respected looked at me like I completely lost my mind. They'd say things like, why would you walk away from something stable? You've worked so hard for this. You went to school for this. You're just going to throw this all away? And I'll be honest, that got in my head. There was a moment where I really had to think about that. It's so easy to start wondering, what if they're all right? What if I am making a mistake? What if I'm crazy? But what I eventually realized was most people aren't doubting you. They're just projecting their own fear. And so when you step out of the system, when you break out of the 9 to 5 and decide to build something on your own, just recognize it's going to make other people uncomfortable. Your courage shines a huge light on where they've settled, and that threatens something inside of them. Because if you actually do it, if you actually make it work, then they have to face the truth that they could have done it too. And that's why some people need you to actually stay small. Not because they hate you, but because your own growth challenges something inside of their own comfort. And that's okay, but you can't let their limitations become your ceiling. When you choose that non-traditional path, whether that's starting your business, building your brand, following a dream, it doesn't fit inside of a job description. You have to learn to become your own advocate. You have to believe in your vision before anyone else can see it. And here's the truth, nobody's ever going to fight for your dream like you will. Most people tell you what's safe, not what's possible. And that's why self-belief has to be your armor, because there will always be days when nobody sees the vision but you. Days when no one applauds you, when no one gives you that pat on the back, no one tells you you're doing great. And in those moments, you've got to be the one who believes in you anyway. And so here's my encouragement for you today. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for approval. Stop waiting for somebody else to tell you it's okay to go after what's already on your heart. Be your own advocate. When no one else sees the value, you have to see the value. When no one else believes in it, you have to believe in it. Because at the end of the day, the only validation that really matters is the kind you feel when you look in the mirror and know, I didn't play small. I didn't just exist, I actually lived. I believed in me, despite everybody else in my life telling me I shouldn't, and I did it anyway. And so this is the third thing I realized about leaving my 9 to 5, is that people won't understand you when you choose a new path. But even after you push past the opinions of others, there's actually a bigger obstacle in your own way that doesn't exist in the outside world at all. It happens in your own head. Because for me, the moment I knew I needed to leave my 9 to 5, this little voice of doubt started whispering in the back of my ear. And then it almost caused me to not quit my 9 to 5. And this was one of the hardest lessons of all, because when I was debating whether to leave my 9 to 5, my brain kept looping back to the same question. What if this doesn't work? What if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if everyone gets let down? What if everyone watches me fail? And honestly, it wasn't what if it doesn't work. The full statement is, what if it doesn't work and everyone watches me fail? I'd built what looked like a secure life. I had the paycheck, the title, the letters after my name. I was an RD, right? And so I had the whole routine and I thought I had stability. And so the idea of walking away from all of that and possibly failing and falling flat on my face publicly was terrifying. And I remember early on when I had just left my job and people would ask me, so how's it going? And so I would kind of cringe on the inside because at that point, I hadn't scaled my business to multiple millions. I didn't have big wins to share yet. And so it was kind of like, please don't ask me while I'm working on it. Like, let me report to you when I have some good news to share. And that's when I realized something Brené Brown talks about, which is, it's not really failure we're afraid of, it's shame. It's the idea of being seen struggling. The fear that people will watch you try and not make it. But one day, I started to ask myself a better question. What if I don't try? What if I just stay here another year, 5 years, 10 years, and I never find out what I'm actually capable of because I'm too afraid to be seen failing? And that question hit harder than the fear did, because I realized I would rather have every single person in my life watch me fail than live with the regret of never trying. Because regret is heavy. It's one of the heaviest emotions there is. It's this ache of knowing you had a chance to do something different and you were too afraid to do it. It's that voice that whispers, you could have, but you didn't. And I remember hearing a story from Bronnie Ware. She was a palliative care nurse who went years talking to people on their deathbeds and asking them about their biggest regrets. And she said the number one thing people told her was this. Their biggest regret was, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. And that line hit me like this punch to the gut, because that was me. I realized I was still afraid, living more for other people's expectations than for my own. And that's when I knew I couldn't stay in my job any longer. Not because I hated it, but because I was betraying myself by staying. So I made this decision. I'd rather fall flat chasing freedom than stay stuck in chasing certainty. I'd rather risk embarrassment, uncertainty, discomfort than spend one more year of my life wondering what if? Here's the truth. I would rather fail chasing my purpose than succeed living someone else's definition of success. Because that's what freedom costs. It's worth every ounce of risk. And so the fourth thing I learned that caused me to leave my 9 to 5 is fear of regret must be greater than fear of failure. And once you know you need to quit your 9 to 5 to step into your calling, that's when the real work begins. That's when you have to figure out how to actually build something that gives you both time and wealth. So if you've ever wondered, okay, how do I escape this rat race? How do I actually work less and earn more? Then you should definitely check out this video over here where I show you exactly that. I'll see you over there.